Welcome back, everybody. I am Kevin Knowles. We are back here at YGOU University, and I am joined by
Alex Marasco,
Jeremy Stockfleth,
and Bryce Stroik.
And if you do enjoy our content, please check us out at patreon.com/TCGUniversity. Now, the final segment I want to do for tonight is side decking. It's a very complicated thing, but also a very simple thing for a lot of players. And just kind of want to go into the intricacies of it and kind of like what your side deck should entail with your main deck. So, Alex, I'll have you start it off.
The first thing you want to think about with side decking and like the cards you're going to put into your side deck and take out of your main deck during the game is what's good when you're going first and what's good when you're going second. Because after you win a game, you can side deck, or win or lose, you side deck for the next game. So if you win, your opponent's probably going to go first. So you would want to side deck in cards that are good for going second. And if they win and you get a pick, then you can side in your cards that are good for going first.
Okay, so give me an example, just a brief one of what you would do. You play Burning Abyss a lot, so what's a common exchange out that you do?
Whenever I would be going second, I would take out some of the just extender cards like Danger Nessie, like Dangers, or maybe like Gallus the Starbeast for like Kaijus, because Kaijus would allow you to interact with your opponent's strategy when you go second, like get rid of monsters that could interrupt what you want to do.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Jeremy, how about you?
I think a lot of the time when I'm side decking, I think about how important it is for my deck to perform versus how important it is for me to stop my opponent. I think a lot of side decking for me comes into game knowledge, knowing my opponent's deck better than they do. If I'm going against a control deck, I'm going to side in cards like Twin Twisters or Red Reboot, something that stops their floodgates and allows me to play the game. But at the same time, if I'm going against another combo deck that wants to go first and lock me out of playing the game, like extra linking, something like that, I'm going to play more things like Kaijus or Raw Sphere mode, something like that, that will basically, or hand traps even, basically to interrupt their plays so that their board is less of a hassle for me to break. So it depends on, what you're playing against, what you think you're going to be playing against, and how effectively you want to shut them down or to further your own end game.
Okay. Bryce, any other
I was
thoughts
going
on
to
that?
comment on what you just said. I think most of what you just said was like going off of you want to play cards. Maybe you take things out of your main deck that maybe make your goals harder to achieve or make your game playing worse. But like it makes it so you can play your deck better, or like you can play at all. Like when you're signing in Twin Twisters or Red Reboots, when you're playing Burning Abyss in your main deck, you really don't have any answers to stuff like that.
Exactly.
So like you're making your deck worse because you're taking out Sega's Light, one of your better cards, and like possibly some other extender monsters that in most situations you would want to have like more extenders to further your own game plan instead of ruining your opponents, because in general that's a better strategy. But if you can't play the game because they have rivalry of warlords, then like you have to play X card to be able to defeat that, or else you're just going to lose.
Exactly. I'd rather play a worse deck than not play the game at all.
Exactly.
Okay, so like what do you guys, for like some of the newer players, like what is like some of the more key side deck cards you would say right now? Like in this format, what's a good side deck card? Like what's almost like a must-have
I think
in your
most
15?
people are playing some variation of Twin Twister and or Red Reboot, either as 3-ofs or 2-ofs for some of them, but like at least 5 to 6 slots are dedicated to that. And like I know at the most recent YCS, the people that were playing like the Danger Thunder Dragon deck, they decided not to play as many of those cards, and they did very well throughout the tournament until like the end of the tournament, where they just played against Alter guys and they both lost the same dude because they don't have an out for the most part. They didn't play any Twin Twisters, so they didn't have any out to rivalry. So it's like they just kind of just lose if they draw that card.
Okay. How about you guys? What's your favorite side deck card, or what's like your must-have that you always throw into your 15?
In mine, I pretty much, it's kind of hard to say. I always find, in all of my side decks, I pretty much find Twin Twister in all of them because I don't like floodgates. I think it's hard to say that there's a staple side deck card or a set of side deck cards, because every deck is different. And every deck you're playing against is different. You're going to have a different strategy against other decks. So I think saying, hey, I'm going to throw Twin Twister or Red Reboot in all of my side decks ever is kind of hit or miss, because you could be playing a deck that you need all the cards in your hand. You can't afford to discard off Twin Twister, something like that effect. So I think that it definitely comes down to the deck you're playing and the matchups that you are afraid of the most. But I think there are some universally good ones. Like we saw Sphere Mode in like everybody's side deck when Goki's first started getting big, when the extra link mechanics started becoming big, because that was the best surefire way to break that and allow you to play the game. So I think in certain metas there are key side deck cards that will go in most players' side decks, but I don't think universally we can say that there's, like cards that should be in everybody's side deck.
Okay. How about you, Alex?
When I build my side deck, I'm looking for like key categories, and it's usually like what would be strong going first and what would help my weaknesses when I'm going second.
Okay.
So like when you're weak going second, you would want like if they're a combo deck, outs to their board, like they're monsters. So like for Thunder Dragons, you'd want to side in like Book of Eclipse because they make like a wide field of strong things. And then but like against Sky Strikers, you just want a Kaiju to like shut them out. But against like the Altergeist and stuff, you'd want like Red Reboot and Twin Twister or Denko Sekka.
I think adding on to like the going first and going second side deck, some decks don't even have anything else they want to get side playing when they go first. Like there's only cards that you want to put in going second because your deck is as good as it's going to get when you're going first, and they don't play any cards in their main deck specifically for going second because they're just kind of all in on going first. And I know I do that with Gem Knights, so it's like my entire side deck is built around when I'm going second, what cards I want to put in when I'm going second against X deck, and a lot of combo decks are just that way because game one, like there's not any specific hate that most people are going to have against your deck, so you're more safe to just play more extenders game one.
I feel like a lot of the times your side deck choices are going to be for when you're going second.
Well, it depends entirely on what you're playing. Like current Burning Abyss, what I play is mainly a going second deck. And so I know that a lot of times when the dice are thrown and I choose to go second when I win the die roll, people are going to think, oh, well, he wants to go second, so if I lose, I'm going to make him go first. And so I cater my side deck accordingly. I side things like Majesty's Fiend that allows me to make a good turn one play that shuts down my opponent. So I think it's entirely based on what you want to play. If you're playing going second deck, you're probably going to side to go first. If you're playing a going first deck or control deck, you're probably going to side to go second to strengthen your bad matchup. You're basically, I think siding is not necessarily for trying to counter your bad matchups. It's trying to counter your bad mechanics. What mechanic of the game or aspect of the game is going to hurt you the most, and how do you counter that?
Yeah,
okay.
I like that because, like, specifically in your deck, I don't know if you play like Blackluster Soldier or anything like that, and like if you know possibly that you're gonna have to go first, that's just a brick card. You don't want to start with 4 cards. You'll probably just side that out just to be safe because it's a great card to have when you're going second, but it's just terrible to go first with because it's just a brick. You need to get something on the board to stop them on their next turn. And yeah, you just want to play it safe by just siding out the cards that are good going in a specific route if you don't know what they're going to pick, especially when you usually go blind second.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll say for me, like the 2 decks I've learned how to play are Altergeist and Gem Knights. For Altergeist, like your side deck is like really, really weird because there's a lot of like going first and second, but it's so matchup dependent. Like one of the ones I really liked in Altergeist, and I even thought about main decking it, was Evenly Matched, because Evenly Matched was just ridiculous in that deck. You get to resolve it and then go multi-faker and just keep going off. And you don't really see that one in a lot of other side decks, but for Gem Knights, like it's all hand traps. Like I have like 3 Veiler, 3 Ghost Ogre, 3 Ash. Like it's all stuff to make sure I can get my turn so I can kill you. And I think side decking is one of those difficult things, and I think building the side deck itself isn't the hard part. I think what to take out and then what to put in is the hard part. And I always struggle with that sometimes, even later into the tournament. And I'm like, okay, well, what do I need to take out of my 42-card Gem Knight deck? Like, I need all these 42 cards. I chose to play these for a reason. Now what do I take out in order for these to happen? And so just kind of your guys' thoughts on what to take out almost. Like, how do you guys personally go about making those decisions?
Because you can't take out too many cards that go with your game plan. Because if you're taking out, like, let's say I'm playing Gem Knight, because apparently that's just what we talk about sometimes here. But I have a hard time sometimes when I'm going second side out because I know, for instance, when you were watching me play at the regional, you saw me side out like a bunch of cards when I was going second against I think he was playing Spiral, and I remember you made a comment about that. It's just like, in that specific matchup, I had a lot of things I could side. I didn't side all of them in, but I remember I probably oversided, which is a big thing in this game. Is sometimes you do overside. You take out too many cards from your main deck that makes it so your deck just has too many cards that counter their deck and not enough that make your deck do what it's supposed to do. And if you draw too many of them, it's just an adherence. So I think, yeah, one of the big things is not taking out too many of your engine cards. Otherwise, you can't play, even if they're not playing in. It's going to be hard for you to win.
Yeah, I agree. Like for me, with Gem Knights, like if I go second, I usually like guaranteed I'm siding out Called by the Grave because it's not good going second. Guaranteed I'm going to take probably Drag Down out because I don't like it as much going second because a lot of the times the decks are just like flooding their hand out. And so like those are the two choices. Really, it's like, okay, those are the two cards I'm guaranteed to take out. And I have those flexible spots. But for something like Altergeist, it's even harder because you're like, okay, I already have like a lot of good trap cards. I don't know what to take out for the other good trap cards. And so I don't know. How do you guys like make those decisions? Because it's hard for me to make those decisions, and I usually end up like siding out cards I shouldn't have, and then it really bites me in the butt.
Usually when I build my deck, I rank the cards in it like by their power level, and usually I'll just chip away when I'm side decking. I'll chip from the bottom of that list out for the side deck cards.
Okay.
So like, I don't know, in Pendulum you play like 5 or 6 just random Pendulum monsters for your going first combo, and you can just cut those out because they might not help you going second, and you can put your side
Okay,
deck
so
in.
you kind of like have a list of the cards, and you're like, okay, this is the card I need the most from my deck to work. These are the cards I need for my deck to not work. Like these are the least. These are the ones I need the least.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of just take out those least needed ones, and then you're like, okay, well, if I side these in, they're high priority now. So it's almost like a priority list of the cards in your deck.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
like
think
that
another
idea.
strategy that goes more with like the Altergeist game plan and like more of a control game plan is maybe going first, or I mean not going first, but in the first game you play more decks in your main deck that are more broad, they cover more matchups, and then you side those out for more specific hate for like a one deck. Like I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but
Like Mind Crush, you would side in Mind Crush over something less specific for Sky Strikers.
yeah, because like maybe Mind Crush isn't as good against like, I don't know, like Thunder Dragon. I can't think of anything, like maybe like Burning Abyss, something like that doesn't add as much. And like, but against a different deck, it's just specifically that much better. Like it's a 10 out of 10 instead of just like a 6 across the board that you would play in your main deck, or like a 7 across the board. And or Mind Crush would be like a 2 in some matchups.
Yeah. I just want to say side decking is literally the hardest part of this game. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but I hate it. I kind of want to touch on something that both of you said. First on the oversighting. I think it's the hardest part for me, at least, is finding a good balance between you taking out your engine or your extender cards and putting in those, stun cards or prevention cards, something like that. I think that's going to be the hardest part. It also comes down to everyone's deck is different. Everyone's deck has a different amount of core cards in their deck and a different amount of tech slots. And I think it comes down to kind of like what Alex said, ranking your cards to basically which ones are the most and least important. And that kind of just comes down to knowing your deck, playing the deck long enough to know, what works, what doesn't, what's good against this matchup, what's bad against this matchup. So I think the biggest part that goes into side decking is the game knowledge. And so, knowing, I'm going against Thunder Dragons, maybe my Orbital Hydrolander is not so good because it's destruction, and all them big purple monsters just save themselves.
It actually sends. It's broken.
I know it's good, but it's not like it's okay. Maybe that's a bad example.
Yeah, I know, but continue.
Okay. If I'm playing against some randomly go against a Chaos Max player and I can't kill it with my BLS because I can't run over it and I can't target it and I can't banish it. Well, BLS is probably not a good card against that matchup, so I'm gonna side it out.
Yeah.
Something to that effect. It's not always going to be that easy of a choice. It's kind of, I think side decking, for the most part, is kind of risk management. It's what can you take out, what can you afford to take out to try and either slow them down or make your game plan a little bit better against your opponent.
I will say this week I played the Machion Burn deck, I played the Machion Burn deck, and one of the things I was citing in almost every matchup was Waking the Dragon, which is just a trap card that has an effect when it's destroyed by your opponent's card effect. And I played it because I knew everybody was citing Twin Twisters, and I was just like, okay, if they blow this up, I get this sweet 3,500 that can't die, and they just lose. And so I was citing cards for their side deck. Like, I was like, okay, they're going to side deck this card, so I'm going to side deck this card. And so it's almost like that next level metagaming. Where
Counter-siding.
Like, yeah, like you're just decking cards for their side deck. And I know I did that when Fire Fists were big. I side decked 3 Full House for the mirror match because I would just tanky my Fire Fist dude, and then they would tanky, and I'd just blow both of the tankies up in a bunch of their back row, and then they just like lost. And it was purely for that matchup, and it was purely just to side deck against that one deck. So there's always choices between those, and I think like having some like choice cards like that is like really, really important.
Yeah, I know we saw for a while, like right after Red Reboot came out, people were citing Red Reboot to counter other people's Red Reboots. Like, again, it comes down to like that game knowledge, what you think other people are going to side against you, or what popular side decks are going to be, and then putting in cards that stop those. Because a lot of decks, especially if you're playing a combo deck, they're going to side cards to slow you down. And so you want to side deck cards that stop them from slowing you down. That's kind of that same, like, knowing the game, knowing your opponent's deck better than they do.
Yeah, and I think it like side decking because of that is really limiting to the more newer players. It's really hard for them to build a side deck and then also understand how to use it. Yeah, I think, like you said, it's one of the harder things. I think it's really daunting for people. Like, it's really, really difficult to do, and so a lot of people just kind of refuse to do it. So I think in agreement, like side decking is one of those. I think that's where the actual skill of deck building and playing comes from. Any closing thoughts from you guys before we end the episode?
I mean, I had a couple things I was going to say.
Go for it.
But first, going along with what you were talking about, like the counter sighting, I was going to say like there's the conversion sighting and all that aspect. And for those who don't know what conversion sighting is where you just side 15 cards,
Smoke screening,
yeah, to completely change your strategy. So I know some people like one of the big ones I remember was like people playing Inzektor, and then they'll just side deck into Chainburn because there's a lot of cards that you play in Inzektor that would also be good in Chainburn, and so people side all this stuff that's very good against Inzektor, and then you change your entire strategy to go into Chainburn, and they don't have anything that's good against that.
They essentially whiff their counter.
They whiff their counter. So it's like you were talking about how Waking the Dragon is like next leveling them. It's like even more next leveling them than that. And another thing I was going to talk about, unless anyone has anything to add upon that.
No, you're good. Keep going, please.
Personal assault story. It's fine.
Insert personal assault story.
Another thing I was talking about, wanted to talk about was like the space of your side deck and like how I figure out what cards I want to put in my deck. So the first thing I do is find the number of cards I want to take out when I'm building my side deck, how many I want to take out in my main deck per like matchup, and so then I know how many cards I want to put in, and then maybe I want to put in like all of these cards, and maybe it adds up to like 20 or so cards. I want to find out like maybe this card is super good in this matchup, but there's another card that is not as good in the matchup, but it covers another matchup as well. So like playing cards that cover multiple matchups in your side deck, so you can cover more matchups in your side deck because you're not playing specific cards instead of playing cards that are good across the board.
So just kind of being limited by the number of cards you can side deck, which is 15, and just trying to make it so that you cover more matchups in a meta that's like really big like ours right now, where there's like 10 decks that are viable. You can't really afford, let's say you play 3 of each 2 cards. You can't afford 6 slots just for one deck. You might not even see it that whole tournament. And so having a lot more broad spectrum cards versus like more targeted cards.
Correct.
And just trying to make that decision is really, really hard. And it kind of comes up to like how you deck build, I think is what you're saying. And just trying to see like, okay, well, if I'm going to take out 5 cards of this matchup, well, honestly, I really only need 5 cards for that matchup. And then maybe I choose 3 cards that are specific to it and then 2 cards that are very broad spectrum too. So it just kind of allows your side deck to be more flexible, I guess.
Yeah, so like maybe those more broad cards are very good in like another matchup as well.
Okay. Right. Alex, anything?
Something about what you said I liked. it's about knowing what you want your hand to look like in the game. Like what would like the optimal, like for like the ratios you would put in. Like you'd only really want to see, like in certain matchups, you'd only want to see one card as a side deck against them because that would open it up for your whole deck to work. But like when you need to like stop their strategy, you would side in a lot of cards, kind of targeting because you want to make sure you're able to prevent them instead of just allowing you to play.
Like let's say Rivalry of Warlords, like you only want to see one of it. You don't want to see two of them.
Yeah.
Like when you see two of them in your opening hand, you're like, okay, well,
It's
this is
redundant.
worthless.
This is a backup.
Yeah. So, but then a card like Ash Blossom, you're kind of happy to see two. Like you're not mad that you're seeing two of them because you're like, okay, well, if I Ash Blossom a card and they have something else to follow it up, now I got another one. So it's kind of like weighing the options of them and being like, okay, well, if I see multiple of this card, I'm actually not upset about it. And if I see multiples of this other card, now it's like a problem. Now I'm wasting space.
Okay. I think as a final bit of parting advice for all the new, returning, or veteran players out there, whenever most of side decking comes into, even in your main deck when you're building your deck. So always keep in mind, I think, when you're building your deck, you have 3 separate decks that you're playing. You have your main deck, your side deck, and your extra deck. All of those things need to be considered when you're building a deck. And so you need to leave those tech choices. You need to leave, room for siding.
Okay, so when you're deck building, just make sure that you keep in mind your side deck as you're building your main deck.
Yes.
Awesome, cool. So I think that's going to cover everything for tonight, guys. Thank you again, and please make sure you do check us out on patreon.com/TCG University. Constantly be updating it, and all the tier rewards are awesome. So please go check us out. Thank you so much.
And let us know in the comments what your favorite side deck card is.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.